Welcome to day 3 of our DBXL training this week. My name is Patrick. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Great to have you back, PY and Luke. So first off, let's discuss Module 4 from yesterday. Any questions? Did either of you get to the lab for the PDF generation? Okay, so PY says not me. And Luke, I know you got Module 3 done. That was great to see. So I'm guessing, Luke, that you may be away from your computer. There you are.
I'm here.
Hey, how's it going?
I go through module 3 and 4, but both of them have some issues.
Okay, you want to talk about those right now?
It depends on your schedule. We don't have to because I think I know the concept, so I should be fine.
Okay. So what were the issues, just in a nutshell?
The first one is when I set up DBXL on the SharePoint site. When I tested, it gave me an error message. It said that the data type cannot be found. So that's the error message. I don't know which part I did wrong.
Was it the doc type or the data type?
Document type.
Okay, because probably when you added it to DBXL admin tool, you might have used the wrong name or something, or maybe you didn't add it. Let me just go there and find it here real quick. I just want to ask you this question because if others try to go and use the same lab, they might run into the same problem. So that's why we're asking these questions here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to log in as the DBXL admin. And you should be able to do, let's do Qdabra 1. You're doing G1, is that right?
I use the training user. You give it to me yesterday.
That's right. So it's, what is it again? It's training user, like this?
Training _ user.
And what's the domain that you're using?
Qdabra.
Is it like that?
Yeah.
And the password, what's the password?
The same as others.
So it's the same as the ones from last week's training?
Yeah.
Let's just try this here. Because you really want to test this with your credentials, Luke, to make sure that you have the power to solve world hunger, among other things. And get your form published. That's the key thing. So I don't see your form here at all.
No, I use my own DBXL.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so what you're going to do is you're going to want to make sure that the module doc type here is exactly the same as what's in the form. So either the form, you didn't update it to have _ your name, or when you added it here, it's wrong. It's different. So the name is what it's keying off of, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
the module 4, the problem is I'm not be able to add it to the admin tool. Like here you see module 4 PDF generation.
Right.
If I try to add it, it just add that form, it automatically gives me an error message.
Well, you're going to be adding a new one called _ Luke, right?
Right.
So you're going to add yours module 4 PDF generation _ Luke or something when you do the new config, right? They'll just do that, and then it will give you an error message. And then you just need to make sure that after you've done that, that when you add the Qt render mapping, and this may be on your system documents if you're running it locally there, but you want to make sure that the render mapping is added for that doc type, whatever it is spelled. So it looks like.
I think it may be some issue because I use our DBXL rather than Qdabra.
Yeah.
So something doesn't work.
You might have a permissions issue, you think?
Yeah, but I really don't worry about it because the PDF version we already use it, so I already set up for our current form, so I know how to do that. Yeah.
Okay, well I've just verified that we can log in using your credentials, so that's good. Thank you for providing me the training user credentials. Okay, what else was bugging you?
No, That's it.
That's it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And PY, any you said you didn't have time to work on labs. That's cool. Okay, so today we are going to be finishing up our training this week, and the goal for today is to talk about techniques to integrate with the cloud. So 365, SharePoint Online, Azure, Amazon Web Services, whatever you're using, we want to give you, we've provided a couple key methods in DBXL 3.0 to allow you to integrate with the cloud, and these are submit with key and query with key, query DB with key actually, and they're both underneath the anonymous web service. If you're looking at your Qdabra web service, what you want to do is scroll down and look at the anon. I don't even think we have a link to it here in this version, and this is the most recent version, so you may not have a link to it. But what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to type in the web service, and actually it's what you're going to do is there's going to be the web service you're going to call is going to be called anon, and it's in the document. Let me just show you where it is in the document. So you're going to be connecting to this anonymous service. It's called, well, first of all, you're going to be connecting to DBXL key service, but and then you're going to be connecting to the anon web service, which is, where is it here? So you get user key. We're going to go through this in a second, but I just want to make sure I show you kind of where this stuff is. And Don, if you can quickly point me in the right location, that might be good too. But I believe, so set up the document type, and then where is it? It's here it is, DBXL document with user key service, right?
Yep. That's a correct one.
It's a long one. So this web service has 4 methods and allows you to get a document, submit a document, query a document, and submit a document with key. Now the other web service you're going to be using is query DB with user key. And let's just assume that's spelled the same way. Obviously it's not. And it doesn't have the service on the end of it. Very inconsistent, but that's the new web service for the query DB with user key service, slightly truncated. So we're going to be using these 2 web services to submit data and query information when you've got 2 different cross-site, cross-domain instances. In general, your cloud instance is going to be your client. You're going to be running 365. Most of our customers are. And your server is going to be running either your local server or Azure. Now, you can also do the opposite. You can have your local SharePoint site submitting to a Azure service or something running on Amazon Web Services. And that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to show you the example of querying, getting a user key and querying and submitting to the web service that's running in Azure, the one you've been using in this class. Okay? Now, we need to talk a little bit about security. Security is really important, and when you're submitting with keys and querying with keys, the only person that can create a key is the DBXL admin. So your DBXL admin account is kind of like your central admin in SharePoint. It's the admin account that you're going to use for, at the highest level, you've got DBXL admin, you've got the server admin, you've got DBXL admin, then you've got doc type permissions, and underneath doc type permissions you have document level permissions. So if we were to look at QD expense report sample here in the designer, in the edit mode, I'll show you the permissions tab in this, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about the different 4 levels of permissioning. Just to give you guys a quick understanding of this. So we have 2 permission levels set up here in DBXL. Notice that this app isn't even using the doc type or doc level permissioning. These 2 permission sets are useful when you're in the same domain. They're not useful when you're across domain. And that's why we don't have this. So typically you will have this enforced, and you will have, for example, everyone, and typically it's going to be, oh, what is it called? I forget. It's NT. Don, do you remember what the incantation is? Usually it's like, and there's like a special.
Authority users, something like that.
Yeah, something like whatever your Windows authentication is, and then you'd have all users or whatever. It'll be whatever your stock credential is, and then you can basically give everyone add permissions but not edit. And then typically the document level permissions would be used for like reviewer, and you would typically have some kind of a XPath in here. Right, and then you would allow this person, the person who it's currently assigned to be able to edit it, right? And you might also have, when you reject it, it goes back to the submitter, so it may actually be, it's just the person who's currently assigned the form. Dynamically, it's going to check the data in the form. If the credentials for that user match the credentials in the form, it lets them edit it. And it does this when it opens the form. So it checks permissions when you open, it checks permissions when you save. It's got pretty fine-grained permissioning in the XML. So DBXL comes with this fine-grained document level permissioning. On top of it, you've got the document type permissioning, which is specific to the type, in this case, the QD expense report sample. Above that, then, you've got the DBXL admin, and the DBXL admin then has support for editing the catalog, opening the admin tool, adding licenses, adding new doc types, and so on, right? So as an admin, you can see everything here. If you're not an admin, you've got doc type permissions, you can still see the doc types that you have permissions on, but you can't create new ones. But if you're a DBXL admin, you can create new ones. You can also see system document types. The DBXL admin is the most powerful user for the system. When you install DBXL, it gives you the option of specifying the DBXL admin. Typically, it's going to be domain / DBXL admin or admins, right? It's going to be a group, and you're going to have users in that group. Okay, then above that, you'd have, of course, the machine admin, which is what you use to install the web service. So those are the 4 levels of permissions in DBXL on the server side. And because we are using keys, we're using cloud-based tokens to authenticate people, we're not going to use any of those. In fact, we're going to use a key, we're going to create a key for a user. So whenever you create a key for a user, you're always going to be, it's just one of the first example in the lab is to create a key. So whenever you're creating a key, the only person that has access to create keys is the DBXL admin, okay? When they create a key, the best practice is never create a DBXL admin key because the DBXL admin is used for managing the service. And if you create a DBXL admin's key, it gives people full authority for everything, which is not what you want. So typically what you're going to do is you're going to create a key, for, and Don, you were using, were you using the same Qdabra training user? I believe training user does have DBXL admin rights. Were you using that one?
I was using the DBXL admin.
Okay, so there's 2 DBXL admin groups here. But I can create a key for the training user one here. Now, it didn't prompt me. Why didn't it prompt me? When you use Windows to connect to a server, even if it's in Azure, it's going to cache those credentials. So you see here, I have a, well, I thought I had a credential cache. Maybe I need to refresh it. But it is, I am logged in to the site on the other machine here. Let's see if I can find it here. I don't see it in this list. Where is it here? So you're going to see that if you don't have a credential prompt, it's because you have something cached here. Now I don't have anything cached here. So the other reason that you might not be seeing a prompt is that you're logged in using that credentials from some other application. Now let's log out of that. Let's log out of this. Make sure we're logged out of everything. And let's try it again. I just tried this before class and it did work just fine. But you should be seeing a prompt. So let's, I got two of them open now, which is not what I want. You should be seeing a credential, what do you call it, a challenge when you do this. And let me just tell you what, I'm just going to save this timesheet here, and then I'm going to close InfoPath down. Just on the off chance that InfoPath has crashed the credentials, I'll save my timesheet here. Obviously, I haven't filled in today's time yet, and we'll just make sure we don't have InfoPath running. And it looks like we do. And now we should not. Any luck, it will die. Okay, so no InfoPath running. So now if I go into the sample, get user key, right-click it, and you can use this sample with your own DBXL instance. You're going to need to change the data connections. By default, the get user key sample is going to point to the data connection that we have for the class, which is this DBXL 365 Qdabra web service, DBXL key service, okay? Okay, so now if I preview this, I should theoretically get a credential prompt, and let's see if that happens. Now it's really important that you use a user that you have in the system on the server. If you don't, it's not going to work. I'm still not getting the prompt. I was getting it a moment ago though. So Don, do you have your credentials just removed? Can you show people this?
I couldn't see my credentials.
Okay, let me just try this. Let me try one more thing here, folks. I know that IE we might have a credential cache in the current system. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch machines, because I know for a fact that the other machine does not have any credentials for this. So let's just switch to my recording machine here. Okay, now you should see my recording machine. There it is. And so once again, you're not going to have to worry about this, but I just want to make sure that I don't have any credentials cached for that service. And you can see here that there's nothing with DBXL 365 at all, which is good. That means that I don't have any credentials cached for that service. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the training for today, Module 5, and I'm going to open this form in the designer. Now this other machine here has not been updated recently, and there's a little bit of an anomaly with the file association, so I have to actually open it from the designer. If you have a problem with your XSNs, like for example, if you don't see a design button here, it's most often because you didn't make it the default program. Now here's the challenge. I could make it the default program, but I need it to be the designer, and that isn't available here. So you have to browse to it, and it's hard to find. So what I usually do in this situation is I just open it directly through the designer. That's possible. And that's also something that if you have a manifest.xsf file, if you have actually exported your source files and extracted all of the files from your info path XSN. XSN is just a cab format, right? If you've extracted all the files from that, then you might be trying to edit an XSF, and that's the same technique. Okay, so let's try this one more time here. Training, user, true, and query for key. There we go. Now we get the prompt. Now, it is only going to let you do this if you're actually an admin. So we're going to just see if the training user is an admin. And that did seem to work. Then we get another prompt for the service. So we'll do the same thing here. We'll use training user. And we're going to type in the password I think I gave to Luke yesterday, and there it worked. Okay, so so that's how you're going to generate the key. Now there's only one key per user right now. That's why you have the override. And what this means is that when I submit a form with this key, this token, it's on the server side is going to assume it's the person submitting it. So if that person has certain privileges, that submit process will inherit those privileges, those permissions. So if, for example, the user is DBXL admin, then they can submit to any doc type. They can also query any doc type. If they're not an admin, if they're just a user that has access to a doc type, they'll only be able to submit to that doc type. Okay, and we could test this. We can go into detail and show you the permissions working, but that's how it works. So these keys are pretty important. You don't want to give these keys out to people. You want to keep them stored, and they obviously you can have a regimen where you expire them, but essentially it's going to allow you to only allow input or queries from sources that have the right keys. Okay, so the way we're going to use this then is we're going to save this key out to Notepad, and I'm just going to save this into the library and switch back to my other machine because I don't have a keyword on this. Just give me 1 second. So switch back to my main machine. Now, our goal today is to create a form that lives on our local SharePoint site, the training 2013 formsport.com, that submits to the cloud account. Now, just so happens that our training 2013 user Training 2013 site is actually exposed to the internet, right? So this is exposed to the internet, but it works the same way locally if you're doing a local intranet and you want to connect to it. So we have these two labs that we're going to create. The module, the document, has actually two parts in it. The first part is going to show you how to query. Let's just take a look at it here. Okay, so let me just go into view and just zoom this up a bit. Okay, so now the document, this is similar to day 1 and day 2. It's about a 20-page document, and basically the goal here is to show you how to connect cloud-based services with your forms. And so we're going to be basically going through and creating that key, which you just saw me do. And the way to do that, of course, is to create a form, and then you can basically, it shows you how to create that sample. So this form walks you through how to create the get user key form that you saw me open. Okay, and then you go through and you preview it, and after previewing it, you've got a key. So manage rules, you add some rules for querying the data, and then you get the key after you preview it. So then you're going to get that key, and you're going to store that key into Notepad. That's this step on page 5 now. Okay. So as you see here, we're just specifying here that only the DBXL admins have access. So your typical users can't call this DBXL license keys web service. They can't get keys for their users, so it's restricted to the admins only. But typically what you're going to do is you're going to create a list of keys in SharePoint. Let me show you what we do internally for our leave request form. So we have a leave request form on our HR site, which is right here. And actually, I'm sorry, this is the wrong one. We have a support form that we use for our customer support. And the support form is actually submitting, it's in 365, and what we're doing is we're storing the keys for the users here. Now you can see here that we're showing, I can see all of these user keys because I'm an admin on the site, but typically what you're going to want to do is have per item permissions for these keys. So you're going to store the keys in a list, right? And you probably have one generic key for a group of users. And you could have any users you want. The users have to exist in the target application. So you can see here that these usernames are not 365 usernames. These usernames are usernames from FormsBoard, which is our separate cloud-based service running in Amazon Web Service, right? So we have a FormsBoard application for sharing forms that is a non-SharePoint based form dashboard. So this site allows us to share all the forms for our business processes, right? They're InfoPath forms, and we can submit, we can keep them here. This is backed by DBXL. So FormsBoard actually is available to you if you're interested in this kind of a dashboard. You want to save some money on your SharePoint licenses, we can help you. And we've been using that for years and years because we were one of the first ones on Amazon Web Service. So what we did in this support form was we actually have a form in the support. So if I look at my support form here, I've got 7 active requests I need to work on in the last week or so. And you can see one of them is just recently, I need to edit Chris Miller. Chris Miller was modified today. You can see that each one of these support tickets has a doc ID. If I open this up, it's going to open up in InfoPath. What I've done here is I've integrated 365. Let me just show you what Chris Miller looks like here. I'm not sure why the by is not modified correctly, but the form opens in InfoPath Filler. Now we have a form on 365 that submits to FormsBoard. So FormsBoard is where we keep all of our business documents. It's in the cloud. Our 365 account is also in the cloud, but it's a different cloud. So we want to connect the two together, right? And we're going to be using that submit with key to do that. So here you can see my information from Chris's support ticket today. So it's a pretty simple, straightforward form. I can look at, I just have some show hide in here. I can see the latest edits to my customer support form. What's interesting about this is this is the filler, but we also have the form opening in the browser. So if we go back to our support site, and if I click, I need to go to home here, I can type in that support ticket. And I don't know if we remember what it was, but let's see if I can find the number again. It We really should have a dashboard here to let us search on. I've actually asked Dawn to do that, but in the meantime, 23468A is what we want. So we just recently actually added this integration to 365, allowing us to open up a customer support form on 365. It's querying FormsBoard using query with key, right? And then it's going to turn around and submit to it. So let me show you that in a second here. So this is actually opening the InfoPath form up. It's a different InfoPath form. We've actually updated the InfoPath form. And you can see here that it's got the same information, a slightly different format, right? And I can actually update it. I can add some information. I can also view the information in our bug database. It's integrating with the bug database. A fairly simple UI. It needs some improvement. We just deployed this. Obviously, you can see that the buttons are pretty plain. So I'm going to say here, I'm going to add another item here saying, I'm going to actually assign this to Hillary. And what I'll do is I will and I'll CC myself. QDS is an element, we use this to describe a secondary data source. So the issue that this person's having is that they open a form in the browser and they navigate over a repeating section, and all of a sudden things just disappear. And it's because it's a secondary data source that's bound inside of a main data source node. And it's relatively esoteric, but I'm just going to assign this to her and update the ticket. Now when I click update, what it's doing is it's actually submitting the form using submit with user key back to FormsBoard, and it's going to be then generating a notification. DBXL has rich notifications in it, so we should see an email appear in a moment, and I will, when that happens, I'll open it. What I want to do though is I want to show you that form, because this form is a great example of a form that uses these two methods that we added to DBXL 3.0. So we're going to go into, we're going to download the form. So the Forms Viewer app is our InfoPath v2. It's basically an application that takes InfoPath forms and allows you to edit them, modify and view them, and it has a whole bunch of functionality that we don't find in InfoPath today. This is what we're going towards. This is our new product. We're not pushing it very hard right now, but you can see we've got several customers on it, and what I want to do is I want to open up the customer support form, if I can find it here. There it is. And I'm just going to download it, and I'm going to show you what this form looks like. Because like I said, this is a good example of using those two methods that we're going to use in the lab. This is a real live example, right, of that. Okay, so I'm just going to put it in here, and you can take a look at our XSR support form too if you're interested. I'll package this all up and send it to you at the end of the day today. Okay, so let's take a look at this in the designer. So it's just an InfoPath form, even though it's running in FormsViewer app. Our FormsViewer app is 100% backwards compatible. Well, not 100%, but it's close to 95% backward compatible. Some things like signatures and people pickers are not yet supported. Okay, so here's the form in the designer. What I really want to show you, though, is the data connections to the submit document with user key. So there's a submit document with user key. There's two submit documents with key. And you can see here, if you look at this carefully, it's submitting it to our FormsBoard site and basically submitting it with my key information. So it queries a list to get my key, and then it uses my key to submit it at the bottom here. We've got some debugging information, but above that, you got the submit ticket, and I think we might even have a separate view for the edit. There's the new blank form and there's the update. So that, you know, both of the buttons are going to be using the same method, but this is the view we were looking at. And if we look at the update here, this rule, this button has rules to perform submit, and that's going to basically is using a secondary data source to manage the form logic, which is a good practice. So it's got a central hub for all the rules, and in this case it is full new submit. I think it's full submit to go, and then it basically runs through and it submits the form to our bug database and it submits it to DBXL on forms board. And there's other fields in here that trigger the submit to forms board. But you can see here that we have a command that we're running to submit the form with user key to forms board. And so that's the command. So this has key rule support built into it, and basically that's an example of a solution that is using user keys to submit data. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this is mainly to show you how you're going to use those keys, right? So to go back to where we started, you'll have a library. Can I get there? So you're going to have a library in a site. You're going to have a web page. You're going to have some ticket to create a new ticket, right? When that new ticket or that new form opens, it's going to query the user key based on the user's credentials. So you're going to create those user keys in advance. Now, like I said, you can use one group, okay? But you can see that in this form here, I've got some debug information. It opens up a brand new form. I can search for Luke, and Luke will query forms word. So it's querying with user key to get Luke's information. You can see I've got 3 Lukes, and pulls up Luke's information, and then I can go about my business of creating a support ticket. Now in the debug view down at the bottom, and I recommend putting your debug information hidden. Like you can use a logo for your company and just basically have it so there's a button, so when they click on it they see it. So you can see down below that it's got my FormsWord user key in here, and it's loading that from my using my 365 login. It queries the list with the DBXL keys to get my FormsWord key, and it's using that then to submit it. And then the credentials that form has when it submits are basically the ones that I use. So in a nutshell, that's how you're going to be implementing it. You're going to have a SharePoint site that has a list for the keys, and those keys are going to be locked down, right? And your form is going to look up those keys to query and submit to your database service running on some other server. Now, of course, if you don't care about the cloud, then you don't care about this at all. It's only useful when you're dealing with 2 different usernames in 2 different domains. And this is exactly how the claims-based stuff works with tokens and 365. So we're using keys like tokens are used in 365. Now, once again, you're going to want to lock this down. These keys that you see here are all generated using that tool that we started off with, this get user key sample. So, for example, I could point this at my other servers, my other FormsWord service, and I could generate a new user key for me, invalidate the old one, right? I could change the data source to, instead of connecting to the DBXL 365 one, I could change this to point to some other DBXL service, generate a user key for that, and so it's the same way. You're going to be generating these user keys and then putting them in the list. And you could have a form or some process on top of the list that forces users to do that, and you could have it all in the browser, right? So they could just click new, then it would open up a form and it would submit the form back to it. Now in this case, this is just a list, but we could have very easily have that form basically submit to the library and then query the library instead, right? So it would have been a better solution if we had actually used InfoPath to edit the items in this list. Okay, any questions so far? So what I went over was how to create your keys. I also talked about why keys are important, and I showed you an example of a customer support form that uses keys, a live form that uses keys to submit to a FormsWord instance from 365. So we went from 365 to Amazon Web Service FormsWord. In the next sample, in this lab, we're going to be going from our local internet SharePoint site, which is just exposed to the internet, to our Azure Web Service. Okay, so in this case, the first thing we want to do is set up our form to submit documents. So obviously, you need a form that is either already added to DBXL admin tool, or you need to add it yourself. So in this case, we're going to choose the QD expense report form because that's already in our DBXL admin tool. Okay, you can see I opened it up earlier. And what you want to do is you can create a new version. So what Don's walking you through here is in step 4, he's showing you a technique to copy a document type, and this is really important actually. If you have a document type and you want to copy it, but you don't want to have to recreate the mapping, just use Save As, and then you just give it a different name. In this case, he's giving it Module 5 Connectivity your name, right? So Luke, you'll go to the QD expense report -sample, you'll click Save As, and you'll give it a new name, and it'll be this name here with your name at the end. And then you'll go to the Permissions tab, and you'll enforce permissions, okay? And you're going to give it, you're going to add the doc type user for that permission. So let's go ahead and do that. Don, I don't think you did that on the admin site, did you? Don, are you still there? Don. I guess Don has lost his network connectivity or something. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go in and we're going to take QD expense report sample, click Edit, oh, we actually already got it there. It's called Module 5 Cloud Connectivity. So you can see that Don already added it. He just didn't add it with his username at the end. So then what you do is you click Save As and give it a new name, and what he did was he gave it the name Module 5. Now the benefit of using Save As is it copies the mapping, it copies the permissions. Let's take a look at the Module 5 Cloud Connectivity form. For the purpose of time, I'm not going to go through every single step, but I do want to go through most of it so you can kind of see the technique here. So he created this Module 5 expense report, and if we look at permissions, you'll see that he's added permissions for 2 users. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove these permissions, and we're going to add a permission for the training user. Because right now the training user, I guess the training user is the admin. So if we generate a role for, and I believe that this should be, Don, are you there? I wanted to ask you about which one you used actually. Looks like you're online, but you muted yourself. Do you have an unmute capability? Okay, I think people can still hear me. So I'm just going to assume that Don has stepped away for a moment. And maybe Reiko knows the answer. Reiko, do you know which one that you guys use to test the form? Reiko does not have audio either. Where did my team go? Which username did you guys use to test the form? If you want to jump in and use audio, that's fine too. I know you have a different location today.
Reiko answered in the chat.
Yeah, she did. She said expense report, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the actual username. Anyway, we can work around it because it's all documented, but essentially what you're going to be doing is you're going to be adding a permission here for the user that you want to give the ability. And you have to make sure you have add, but you don't necessarily need write. You just need the ability to add a document, right? So we'll save that. Okay, and let's just wait for that to finish. Great. Okay, so now and of course it doesn't really matter in this case because I think the training user is a DBXL admin, but we could remove that person from the DBXL admin list, or we could use one of these other ones. Go back to the form now. We've already created the key, so we can delete, or we can just close this sample form. And we're going to actually open up the form that we used that actually submits the keys. I'm just going to open up this form and show you what we did here in the next step. So this form is going to be using that key. Now we're going to have to change the key. For the purpose of this lab, we did not create a SharePoint list that queries the keys. In fact, what we did was a little bit more crude. We actually went into the form and we've hard-coded the form when it opens to set that value. And I believe it's either on open or it's on submit. So it looks like it's on submit. So on submit down below here, when we submit our form, we're submitting it right here to DBXL submit with key. That's good. And we're generating the form name, and that's good. And then if we look at our data connections, the key must be hard-coded in here. And you can see here that it's going to ask us to authenticate probably. If I just cancel this, it'll show me the next screen here. And you can see that that key is getting pulled from the form logic. So I have form logic in my form, once again centralizing my rules. And here's where I have my keys stored. So there's the user key. Now you can say, well, where is this being set? So we can click on Rule Inspector to check that out. And it's not getting set anywhere, which means it's set as part of it's added to the form as a resource file. So you go to Resource Files, we'll export this, we'll export it to our training folder. And then what we'll do is we'll open it up in Notepad++. And you'll see that the key that we're using here should be different than the key that we generated a moment ago with the training user key. So let's just compare these. So they are different. You can see the very end there. The first one ends in KFQ and the last one ends in TYI. We'll just replace the one from the lab with the one that we created. and save. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go back to your form, and you're going to make sure you add that resource file again. And when you add it, you're just going to select it and you're going to replace it. So you'll select form logic and replace with existing file. And then everything will work fine. The data connection to form logic is still pointing to the right resource file, so it should work just fine. Sometimes I like to go through here and reset it just to, make sure that everything is bound correctly, but you don't have to do that. It works. Okay, so now we've got the new key in the form for the submit, right? Which means it's going to be submitting it as training user, not as whatever the lab had. So let's go back to the lab and take a look at the next step. Okay, so we've created our doc type. We've added that key to our form logic file. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add the submit. So the submit method, submit with key, is underneath the DBXL document with user key service, and you can see it right there. So you're going to select the submit with document with key, and go through it and add the key. You saw me go through it too. You'll need to authenticate to get there, obviously. You'll need to give it a valid key just to get to it. And then you'll want to make sure that you are submitting the entire form XML, just like you do with your submit document. It's the same idea. And then you'll want to make sure you're submitting the correct doc type. So the doc type is stored in form values. Now, if we had been smart, we would have put form values in form logic, because form values are kind of specific to the form XSN. And you can see that's where you need to modify this to add your username. For example, if Luke's doing it, he's going to add his, depending on what the doc type is. So this has to match the doc type. Okay, and then it's going to submit it using that doc type. Okay, so let's test this out. There's some other specifications. Basically, you're going to set up a bunch of metadata. You got the key, and you'd set up the key. The XML is going to point to the document. The document type is going to point to that value, doc type. You're going to have a form name. The date is going to be the date time. The name of the metadata, name, author, description, those three fields at the bottom there are going to be set using data from the form, expense code, name, purpose, just like we saw yesterday. And then you're going to make sure that you submit at the end. You need to make sure you set the form name, and the form name here is going to be just the name of the person with date timestamp. So the person who's actually filling out the form. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the submit. Now, we obviously you need, if you're using the browser, you need a data connection library. Before I get to that, let's just go ahead and test this thing out, because we've got the submit working, right? So I'm going to close my support form here. I want to show you in the admin tool. We're going to go back to, we're going to go to documents, and it's going to tell us that we have 2 documents here for the testing, right? So what I want to do is I want to fill out the form from the designer, because the key, it should just work fine, right? Just from the client. Doesn't need to authenticate, so I'm just going to say, what's the big expense for today? Just movie night with my wife, and we'll call it movie. And we are going to watch a movie at our house. We're not going out. It's a low budget affair. So we'll just add our information here. And we're going to look at Never Let Me Go is the name of the movie we're watching. We actually have a DVD. You can imagine, you can guess how old we are. We're actually using a DVD, and the DVD was rented from Scarecrow Video, which is one of the most unusual rental places in the known universe, because we'll call it entertainment. Scarecrow Video has this huge, vast supply of these old DVDs. They used to even have VHSs, but they've since upgraded to DVDs. Now that's even old. and it's like $3 a DVD, which is about what you'd pay on Netflix, but you get better quality, right, or something like that. And then we also did, I'm just going to do one more here. We bought a mailer, because I don't like to drive to Scarecrow Video because it's so far away. So we bought a mailer to send it back. So the whole thing cost about $5. And just to make these numbers a little more interesting, we'll just say $325, and we'll say $199. Pre-stamped mailer. Okay, is the submit going to work? We hope so. We hope so. Okay, well, it's going to pull down the data connection, which is, we don't need to have the data connection pulled down, but I'll show you that in a second. But basically, is it going to work? Hopefully it'll work. So it did submit, it did close. Let's go back to the admin tool and refresh. Please refresh. Yay, we got our form submitted. Okay, so now what's interesting though is that we shouldn't be able to edit this form because I did not give that user right permission. I just gave them add permission. Do you remember that? If we go back to our permissions tab, they have add and read, but they don't have write. So I'm just kind of curious. We know we've been telling you that permissions actually work. So if we open this up, hopefully it'll open up the right form. Just authenticating us. Because we're not querying DB, we're not actually opening it with key. So we do have to give it some credentials. Did I type them in correctly? And this is a three affair, as we saw yesterday. This is a three salute here, 3-finger salute. Well, I don't really want to do that, but I'm going to do it because I'm going to save this form out and I'll preview it again just to get around this little hassle here. Okay, it didn't. So unfortunately, I haven't published the form, so it doesn't know where the form is. So what I'm going to do is to work around this, I'm going to actually try to open it again. But instead of opening it, I'm actually going to save it as XML. I'm just going to say movie XML. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this tool to preview it. Now, if you want to preview an XML, you can go into File, Options, and click on Preview Settings. And this will give you the ability to specify a specific XML file, which is what we're going to do. You don't want to publish it like that because then, well, actually, it only works in preview. So you can publish it like that if you're always using the same file for preview. Okay, so now it's going to preview with that data. There we go. And let's just add some popcorn and see if we can submit this thing back. So because it's submitting with that same key, we would expect this not to work. This is a bonus demo. We did not expect to show you this. It's pulling down the data connection first. Then it's going to try to submit it, and it'll probably fail silently, but we'll see. Okay. Unable to process request. Failed to submit document, access denied. How cool is that? Permissions work. Okay, so if I, now here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go into the admin tool and I'm just going to add the permissions because I can do this on the fly, right? I can say, well, let's let this guy write it. Okay, let's just let it write it. Okay, no problem, we'll let the guy write it. And that just shows you that that key, the permissions for that key are being enforced, right? We're using the user's permissions that you set up for that key. And this is why it's really important that you set up your keys with the correct users. Okay, so once more with feeling here, we'll go for the large bucket of popcorn because we're just feeling like it's going to be a good show. Um, Okay, you can probably hear me through my computer now. I'm going to try to plug in my headset again. Just give me 1 second. Okay, is this better? Thank you, Luke. Where did I cut out? Where was I when you stopped hearing me? I'm guessing it was when you went out, you logged out, Luke, because you thought that it might have been your setup, right? So let me just go back a second. So what I was saying here in the last minute or two was I had just finished giving a demo showing you how permissions, basically showing you how to use submit document with key. And I did a bonus where I showed you the permissions for that and how that works. And I emphasized that it's really important that you get your permissions. You use the right users, create the keys with the right users, and make sure those users have permissions. And that was the whole purpose of that, setting the permission, showing it fail, and then we changed the permissions and we submitted again and it worked. So now what I'm showing you is I'm showing you that the form in the browser, I just went through and demoed the form submitting to the DBXL service from the browser. And I mentioned that the site that we have set up, the library that we have set up for this, does not use the event receiver. Because if you're using the event receiver, you don't care about submitting with key because the event receiver has the credentials in there to submit to the service. So if you're using a browser form and you're submitting it and the event receiver is configured to submit to DBXL correctly, then you don't need this web method. This web method is useful when you're trying to have an external user submit to your form. They don't have access to your library. You want them to submit to your cloud-based DBXL service or to DBXL and they're not logged in. Okay, so that's the key here. And what I showed was that that's why we don't have any DBXL settings for the event receiver. The event receiver is this DBXL settings tab, and we don't have any settings here for Module 5 Lab. We did for Module 3 and Module 4. Now, we've also added data connections. So we have 2 data connections that we need to add. When you're using the browser, and this is kind of a strange scenario because if they're using the browser, number one, you're going to have SharePoint. They're going to be logged in. So you would be using the event receiver. So it's really more valid to test this from a rich client. But you can see here that we can set it up from the browser as well, and we've done that. We have 2 web methods, and the web methods have been converted into what we call universal data connections. The way you do that is in InfoPath, you go to your Data Connections tab, and you click on Submit with Key, and you convert to connection file. The Convert to Connection File button is grayed out here because we've already done that. And that's why when I submitted, it was downloading the data connection from the SharePoint site, and it was using that data connection to connect to the data service. Now, it was still using the key from FormLogic because we had specified in the data connection that it should be using the user key from FormLogic, right? If I go into my FormLogic and change that user key to be something else, then it won't work. Right, so it's truly using that user key. Anyway, okay, so that's the data connections. Data connections are needed when you're using a browser form and you're connecting it to an external web service. And the data connection then will have some information in here that configures to map to that web service. Okay, so that's what you're doing here on page 12. You're configuring that data connection, and you don't have to add a data connection if you're using our site. You just go into it and you're going to add the data connection from your form. You're going to convert it and point it at that site. You always want to choose a relative data connection. The centrally managed ones are not worth using. Don't bother with those. There's not really a good scenario for those. Then you'll publish the form up to SharePoint, making sure you publish it to a new library. Then we've got a section here where we talk a little bit about security, and I've already gone over this. Basically, how this is used, how we're using security to control permissions with user keys. It's a very important topic. And then the latter half of the training shows you how to query documents. Now, for those of you who have not set up a query before, you're going to want to use Query Builder. And Query Builder is part of, it's a tool that we use in DBXL. It's free. If you go to our DBXL, your Qdabra web service page, you can install the Query Builder from this page. Okay, now let me see. I'm going to do this and show you how to do this because it's pretty useful to know how to do this. So I'm going to close my expense report form. And actually, I think what I'll do is take a quick 5-minute break for people. Is that okay if we take a quick 5-minute break? Thanks, PY. Okay, I'll be back in 5 minutes. Thanks. Video on our website and sending you the course content in the next hour. And if you have any questions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'm probably going to retape this session, so the video, I'll put the video out there for what we have, but I'll also be retaping today's video because it was a bit choppy with the audio outage. Appreciate your patience on that, but I'll get the course content out lickety-split here. If you've got any questions on the labs, let us know. We are here to provide free support for the training, and I hope you have a great night. Thanks for your patience today. Cheerios. PY, I'll get those out real quick, okay?
Thanks, Patrick.
Did you see the movie PK, by the way? It's pretty funny. It was an Indian movie. Sorry I called you PK, but it was
I
absolutely
only know about
glorious.
PK Subban now. I haven't seen that movie?
It's called PK. It's about aliens, and it's absolutely hilarious. It's one of the best movies I saw last year, but it's all in Hindi. You get the subtitles, of course, but if you're into international film, definitely recommend PK. A very high-grossing Indian movie in the U.S. last year, which nobody knows about.
I'll look for it.
You had a question, sorry.
I'm just wondering, do you think that there will be this year training on DBXL? I mean, the training I got was on DBXL 3.0, but I don't really know the tool that much, so I don't even know what 1.0 does. So
we should do it. Yeah, one of the things is, we're such a small, company. We've been around for 12 years now, 12 and a half years, but we tend to try to optimize our time. And because we've already done this training on the previous stuff,
or maybe it's recorded some. Okay, maybe it's recorded somewhere on the side.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll check for it.
If
Okay,
you go
perfect.
to downloads,
Perfect.
Can you see my screen still? Underneath the training DBXL 2.8, I would start here. They're going to be the videos for the training we did 4 years ago.
Yeah, I've been reading that forum for years now, but never paid attention about the downloads and stuff until my company decided to go with one of your products. But I'm totally familiar with your site, so I know where to look for it.
And we can do custom one-on-one stuff too. We do a lot of help. I am more than happy to put together a training more end-to-end with the simple stuff. But given the time, given how many features are in it, it's really hard to do it. Since we've already done it, we just point people at that.
Yeah.
But anyway, don't be shy. If you've got something like you're trying to do conditional mapping in DBXL, or you're trying to set up document level permissioning, or you're trying to do the notifications, right, in the workflow that we can do notifications from DBXL. Don't have to use SharePoint. We can help you set those up, right? We can help you set up error notifications so you know when there's an error. There's a lot of cool stuff that we can help you do. Hopefully they've all been talked about in previous classes, but if you see something somewhere and you're kind of wondering, it might be just easier to send us a little email and say, hey guys, I am interested in this.
Yeah,
what do
but
I do?
I know that you guys are busy, so I'll try to get my things like all working for my account first, because it was installed by some consultants that are long gone, and now the person who supports it pretty much doesn't know what to do and doesn't know what the tool can do. So
well, we can support you too. We support lots of customers, so if you need a little bit extra hours here or there, let me know. You've got hours as part of your license. I think you might have used up some of them. But so when you're actually launching, you want to create that XML, that XSN, using this here. So if you have an XML, like you said, you had this XML.
Okay,
I should have showed you this at the beginning. Let me do this real quick for you, because I know you're kind of been saying, yeah, this XML. What was it called? Invoice or something like that. What was the other thing in there?
It was invoice number.
And of course, you could have a group here. You could have like A, B. Should be smart enough to see this as repeating, right? Okay, so let's see if we can get this. We're going to save this out. When you save this from Notepad, without the Notepad++ is obviously way better. I should have done that, but you can save this from Notepad as well as we'll call this. And you have to put quotes around it so it doesn't put the text at the end. Okay, so there's our XML. And then what you're going to do is you're going to point it when you design it. Don't choose blank form up above. Choose XML or schema.
Okay.
And then you're just going to design the form. And it's going to ask you where it is. So you're going to browse to it. And it's creating the XSN with the data source on it. And you can see here in the data source on the right that it figured out that was repeating.
Yeah.
And then you just basically, that's it, and you're done. You just save this XSN and you attach it to DBXL.
Cool.
You don't have to have a view. But of course, if you want to use PDF generation, all that stuff, you're going to want a view, but you don't have to have a view. Now, the other thing too is that if it's an XML, it will guess everything as a string. So if you want to do numbers...
Unless we specify others, okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you have an XML schema definition file, an XSD, that's better. So most sort of government-related XMLs out there have XSDs behind them. So and they'll appear at the top of the XML file. So if there's a reference to an XSD, use that instead because that's got data type information. Okay? But you could come in and you could change it here, right?
Okay.
It's just that the XML that's being submitted, if this doesn't match the data type, there might be some issues with dates, but that's about it. Dates are going to be the most difficult.
That's all right, yeah.
And you can always do SQL data types as strings and then everything will be fine. But yeah, that's how simple it is.